Did we just go live?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay. That was unexpected. I guess 20 seconds goes faster than you realize. Good morning, I guess, yeah, afternoon. Welcome to an episode of Shenanigans with Brent. Because there's no Becky today, because she decided to go where there's sun and happiness and sand and beaches. I can't blame her for that, but now I'm here all alone. We were going to have a special guest today, but there's due to a few unforeseen issues, I'm flying solo because we were going to do Eddie. But to do Eddie, we had to have Danny run the soundboard. But Danny's, she had fish and chips, is what she says, and so she's not feeling well. So it's just myself. So our mystery guest is probably the ghost man on second. And anybody that grew up back in the day playing baseball with not enough kids, you knew that you always had to have ghost men on the different bases because you can't have bases loaded if there's only 3 people on the team. So that's what we're doing today. All that aside, I guess we should get into shop news. Anything as far as shop news goes, check the calendar out for classes. March is pretty light for classes. Wait, should I wait for the graphic to end? Okay, the graphic ended. March is pretty light for classes just because, like I said, Becky's on vacation in a beach somewhere in the, I believe it's Aruba. Yeah. Our thoughts and prayers are with her there. We all wish we were there with her. But because of that, we just kind of light on classes for March. We will keep an eye on the calendar. We're going to start scheduling in April here probably in a couple weeks. There's some paper piecing and a few other things that we're going to get on there. So that's for classes. As far as fabric goes, we did get some fabric. Just came in about 20 minutes ago, which was kind of fun because we actually ordered it last week. And there were just some odds and ends, so we'll get to those. The real reason for the shipment was because, you see, I wanted to get these panels. So these are some nice New Hampshire panels. I had to get them because they say New Hampshire. It has the important places, Mount Washington, North Conway. And this panel is obviously designed when there was a quilt shop that shall remain unnamed in Center Harbor. So Center Harbor also has this spot on there. But it's a really pretty panel. One panel has a larger panel. I should have cut this ahead of time. And then what you'll get is 2 smaller panels in one panel cut. So you can make a really kind of cool little New Hampshire-based quilt. It's really cute. We'll look forward to a sample coming up with that. And the other thing that I ordered, this is just random stuff that I order when I have fabric reps in here. And I had to order this. This was the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's like library stamps. It's really kind of cool. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. But when I saw it, I'm like, I want to have some of that. So that also came in, true to scale. Those stamps are all about the size you'd expect them to be. If you have a librarian in your life, they will probably love this. Or if you have a book person, they'll probably love this. The other two, again, because I wanted the library stamps in New Hampshire panel, I had to get enough fabric to make the order worth it. So we just picked up a couple other random pieces. This was just really cute. I blame Riley for this one. She really wanted it because of the moths and the purple, I guess. But it came out nice. This is a really cute one. This one actually goes really well with a lot of the tulip pink that we have in. And then here's another one from a color standpoint that I don't know if the color's coming through on your monitor really well, but that again, these all just came in kind of random. There's not like a cohesive collection here. It's just I wanted a couple of the pieces and to do what you usually have to get like 4 or 5 to make the shipping worth it. So, we'll put some stuff together. We got lots of basics that make stuff like that work. So that's the new fabric that came in. That's all the excitement there. And then as far as sewing machines, if you are looking for a sewing machine or know somebody that is, we do have stock on the PS700s, the PS500s, and the BQ950. I've got stock on all of those. I still have a Dreamweaver that came in that we're doing for a really reasonable price if you're looking to upgrade into or just get into embroidery. The Dreamweaver does have the big throat that does the 8x12 hoop, so that's something to consider. We've got that sitting on the floor looking for a new home. So there's that. Which camera am I on, Eddie? This one or that one? That one? Wow, I should sit up straight. I look funny in there. Anyway, yeah, this is hard to do when you're all alone. I don't have anybody to pick on me, so it's just my foolishness. So that's all we really have for shop news. Did I forget anything?
Quilt of the week.
Quilt of the week? Well, that's not shop news. That's quilt of the week. No, I have an outline. Maybe we should make Riley the mystery guest. Yeah, see, I have it. See the outline? See, I'm organized, Becky, kind of. It has things on there. See, we're up here at Shop News, and now we have to get down to quiz time. Quiz time! You'll all be amazed that I did think of a quiz for today's show. And so, Becky, if you're on the beach watching this, you'll be proud because we're doing a quiz today. And are we all ready for the quiz? Do I get my quiz music? Okay, I'll have quiz music. Okay, the quiz is, are we ready? What was the focus fabric of last week's Quilt of the Week? Or the theme, even. And for all you watching, understand I am an award-winning dancer. Again, the quiz. What was the focus fabric / inspiration fabric for last week's Quilt of the Week? Nobody remembers? I had stores. Oh, we'll give a couple more minutes. And while we wait for answers, I'm going to tell you the story that I am an award-winning dancer. Believe it or not, I have won prizes for my dance moves. It was at a rodeo in Cody, Wyoming. I had a dance-off with a rodeo clown, and I won. And there is video footage of it out there somewhere, and it is amazing. But I'm a man of many talents, and I can put professional dancer on my resume now. Anyway, no takers for the quiz of the week. The quiz. The focus / inspiration fabric for last week's Quilt of the Week. Anybody? No? Whiskey as a hint?
Oh, I remember that.
Nobody remembers?
I don't remember.
Lolly has her hand up.
Quilting cotton from... Yeah, nice try, Nancy. Oh, Nancy, you would have loved the Quilt of the Week last week. Nope. You remember? Riley's going to let us know because I gave a hint. Whiskey.
It's the Crown Royal quilt.
Crown Royal, that is correct. The Crown Royal bags were the last week's focus fabric in the Quilt of the Week. Yes, Nancy, I'm glad you can appreciate that. But yes, if you all remember, Crown Royal was the she used a bunch of old Crown Royal bags as her kind of inspiration for the quilt. I really liked it, and when she picked it up, she says she has another one made because she had so many bags left over from the first one, which makes me wonder. Anyway, all that being said, that's the quiz. Quiz time! Yay! Yeah, you all watching, you got to chime in more because I'm flying solo here because Eddie's looking at me like I'm crazy. Anyway, so moving on to Quilt of the Week. Look at that. Quilt of the Week. We ready for Quilt of the Week? Quilt of the Week. Oh, actually, I have two. I'm going to do that. I should have done this in Shop News. This is not Quilt of the Week. This is the top that Brenda just finished about 10 minutes ago. If you recall the fabric that we showed last week, some of that Benartech stuff, the pattern project we had for it does not do this quilt justice, and I don't even think you really get the full effect of this on the screen. This is a gorgeous quilt. If you see this in person, we're going to get it quilted up. But once you see this in person, you're going to want to make one. It's not super difficult. It is just a gorgeous, gorgeous quilt. That's not Quilt of the Week, though. That's just a top that I wanted to show to people so that we can sell some of that fabric. Buy the fabric. It's available online. The download is free. You could own this. You could make this quilt. Quilt of the Week. So you see, as a father, I have to brag on my kid a little bit. I mean, the quilting's not the... I don't want to say it's not the best. The piecing is interesting. It was fun watching him do this, which was an inspiration for our upcoming segment. But this is the planet panel that we got in. And Eddie decided that he was going to make himself a quilt. And it came out really cool. And I love the rocket on the bottom. Is a nice touch. The panel itself is fantastic. The colors are great. And then I also just love the quilting he put on it as well. See, he did the whole thing. Is the lighting bad? I can't tell. Is that coming through? I can't tell from this angle. Okay. But anyway, he did it all himself. quilted it all up. We don't have a pattern for this. We don't have anything like that because he just kind of made this thing up in his head. But we do have the fabric. If you want to make it, take a picture and you could make one of those yourself. That was Quilt of the Week. And it even, see, it has a rocket ship on there, which is flying parallel to the moon. Is it in orbit? I don't know. But that's Quilt of the Week. Yay for Quilt of the Week. Look, I'm just running through this. Okay. Very nice. Okay, what else we got going on? My phone is ringing, and my watch tells me it's a suspected spam call. I just thought I would share that with you all. I don't know why. So we're going to skip the turbo tip and the workbench because I'm doing enough talking, so I don't want to bore you all with all the extra segments because we don't have Becky here to entertain us with her bubbly personality. What we're going to do today is we're going to. There was talk last week or the week before that we should get back to basics with some stuff because we've been covering some really interesting, fun stuff on embroidery, but there's this talk of getting back to basics. And watching Eddie and Riley make quilts, it's been kind of fun because I forget how many people don't know the basics. And you'll go back and I watch Eddie do it, I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, it makes sense because we haven't really covered the basics. And I know a lot of people tune into YouTube to learn to do things like quilt. So today we're just going to cover some basic stuff. And what we're going to start out with is cutters. We're going to talk about cutters. I do have a video out there somewhere about that has cutters that I made a while ago. It was in my early days, but I thought that it was probably time to kind of revisit the idea of cutters, just because, like I said, we're getting back to basics. So what you've got is these, and we have a little penguin. Does the penguin have a name?
Pongo.
Pongo. Why Pongo? That's kind of a weird name.
On the tag.
Really, that's kind of a weird name for a penguin. Pongo sounds like it should be somewhere in the South Pacific, not in Antarctica. Anyway, what you've got, we're going to talk about rotor cutters today, just kind of a real basic kind of overview. So what you're going to notice is all these rotor cutters, there's three basic sizes. You've got your 28 millimeter. There are ones that are smaller than the 28 millimeter, but for today's discussion, we're just going to stick to the 28 millimeter. I think there's an 18 millimeter and a little bit smaller. Your 45 millimeter, which is going to be your mid one, and then your 60 millimeter. So these are the three sizes of rotary cutters that you're going to come across in the world of crafting and quilting. And each one has a different advantage and a disadvantage. We're going to start by talking about the size, and we'll get into the different grips because these three over here are also the same size, 28, 45, and 60. So what we talk about on the size is the same. We'll get into the handles here in a little bit. So one of the first things you have to decide is what size blade do you want. The standard for quilting is this right here, a 45 millimeter. The reason for that is a few things. What you're going to get as the blades get smaller, a smaller blade is really nice for cutting templates. You'll probably use it a lot in paper crafts because a smaller blade, because it's smaller, does curves really well. So if you have to cut a circle, a 28 millimeter is going to be your blade of choice. But the problem is, on a smaller blade, you're also limited to how the thickness of your material and how many layers of fabric you can cut through. So a smaller blade, like I said, you'll see it a lot in paper crafts. You will see it if you're into templates and that sort of thing. So it's nice to have in your toolkit, but if you're only going to have one cutter, it would not be this one. If you're only going to have one cutter and you're just starting out, you would want a 45 millimeter. 45 mil. Before we get into that, let's talk about a big blade. What's a big blade good for? Big blade is good for cutting through thick stuff. If you're going to be cutting like batting, for example, a couple layers of batting, you want a nice thick blade, a bigger blade because you have a deeper cutting surface. The other thing that is really advantageous about a 60 millimeter blade is it cuts straight extremely well. Where the smaller blade is good for cutting templates and around corners, the bigger 60 millimeter is good for cutting really good straight. If you're cutting a lot of straight stuff, which is mostly what you're doing when you're quilting, a 60 millimeter is nice. So a lot of people think by default they want to go to 60. I usually encourage people to go to a 45. A 45 is kind of the best of both worlds. You can cut curves with it for the most part, and it will also cut straight fairly nice. The big reason that I would go with a 45 over 60 when it comes to quilting, honestly, a 60 is probably the way to go if you're doing a lot of quilting just because it does a lot of straight cuts really nice. But the reason that I encourage people to go to 45 is that the 45 millimeter is kind of the industry standard. And what that brings with it is most of your 45 blades are standardized. So an Alpha blade will work in a True Cut cutter or a Martelli cutter. They're all using kind of the same blades. 60 millimeter blades have not been quite as standardized as 45 millimeters. So if you have an Alpha, for example, you have an Alpha cutter versus this is a Clover cutter, you might find that the hole that you use that the blade uses is going to be a different size based on the brand of the blade. The other thing you're going to find with 45 millimeter is where a single blade for the 60 millimeter is going to be like $12. They're expensive, where you can get 3 of the 45 millimeters for that same price. And if you've done any amount of cutting, you know that you're going to need to replace your blade at some point. And cost of ownership on the 45 is actually a lot less than on the 60. And with the standard blades as well, you've got a lot more to choose from, so you're not going to have to spend as much on new blades on a 45. So if you're just starting out quilting, you want a 45 is the clear winner. Ideally, you would have one of each in your toolbox, but if you were just starting out, you only could have one 45. And whenever you're going to go cut fabric, the one you're going to probably reach for is the 45. The one we have in the classroom here is a 45. What we use at the front counter to cut yardage is a 45. The 45 millimeter, that has me, oh, never mind. The 45 millimeter, I was just thinking, 45 millimeter, I'm thinking that's an awful lot bigger than a 45 ACP bullet cartridge. And then I realized that a 45 ACP is a caliber, not a millimeter, like a 9 millimeter. Two different standards. And I have no idea what that has to do with rotary cutters, but that's what you get when I'm left alone to do this. That's the kind of stuff going through my head. But this is the standard cutter, and if you are out getting ready to learn to quilt, this is what you're going to be using. Again, if you've been quilting for a while, these do have a place. Templates, curves, this is going to be great for thicker stuff. Usually you see people use this for batting. I do know a couple ladies that this is actually what they use for all their quilting because they do like how this cuts straight lines. It's easier to cut a straight line with this because of the bigger blade. So that's going to be blade size. Now, if you'll notice on here, we've got different handle size, and these aren't all of the available cutters. There's a ton of different cutters out there, but these are just kind of these are two good representations of the two extremes of the straight handles versus the ergonomic cuts. And you'll find that the ergonomic handles come in all shapes and sizes. There's a reason that we here at Four Pines, this is the one we stick with as well as your straight handles, and we'll get into that. One of the things to keep in mind for cutting, have I lost anybody yet? Everybody's probably sleeping at this point because this is how exciting this is. We're good? Okay, continuing. What you're going to find also when you're looking at cutters is right-handed versus left-handed. One of the problems you have in the quilting world is you have a higher proportional number of left-handed people that quilt versus what you see in the general population. This is one of those weird things because lefties tend to be the artistic side of their brain or something. So what I have found is instead of, in our studio audience, half of it is left-handed as we speak. But I would say that left-handed people in quilting, you're probably close to 30%. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if there's an actual study out there, but it's significantly higher than what you see in general population. And one of the things you have to take into account with a rotary cutter is it is left-handed versus right-handed operation. What's nice about a cutter like this is that if you're right-handed, you can cut with it on this side. If you're left-handed, you just flip it over. So this is an ambidextrous cutter. So that's one of the big advantages of a straight handle cutter. And this, most people learn to cut on straight handles, and we're going to get into this in just a second. But if you're left-handed, keep that in mind that that's going to affect what you can buy for cutters. Now, there is one of my favorite cutters I don't have on here. My favorite is the Martelli Ergo Cut. We used to carry it in the store, but the problem with it is it was specifically right or left-handed. So we had to stock both, and it just, from a stock standpoint, we just decided that these were easier to go with. These are a very nice compromise because these are going to be very similar. It looks quite a bit different than a Martelli Ergo Cut, but the grip and the ergonomics of it are very similar, and we're going to get into that ergonomics here in a minute once we get through the lefty versus righty. So stay with me if I haven't lost you yet. What you've got on this is set up for a right-handed person. And what that means is if I hold it in my right hand, the blade is on that side. If I go left hand, oh yeah. Yeah, Wilma has a Ergo Cut for us. This is a Martelli Ergo Cutter. And this is one of my favorite cutters. You can see that it's very similar, just it's turned sideways. But the difference is, to use this, you have to have the proper side. This is a left-handed one, I'm guessing. Because now they changed Martelli changed it that red is now right and black is left, which is why this one threw me off, because it fits in my left hand. But this is a very comfortable, but you can see that if I wanted to cut with my right hand on it because of the way this handle's designed, I can't. That's how I'd have to grip it right-handed, and that's just not going to work for anybody. So that's why, if you're looking at a Martelli, these are very nice cutters, and I do recommend them if you want to get one. But we stopped stocking them because we had to, left versus right, and like I said, high percentages of lefties versus righties. But I'm going to give that back to you because I'm not left-handed, so it's not very useful to me. But this one is this cutter right here is set up for a right-handed person, because if I hold it in my right hand, my blade's on that side and I go. What's nice about the True Cut Ergo Cutters is that you can you can switch the side that the blade's on. So I can disassemble this and put this blade on this side. So this is an ambidextrous cutter. So that's something to keep in mind too as well if you're looking at cutters, is lefty versus righty. A lot of the cutters now are ambidextrous, but like I said, one of the better ones out there is you have to get a left or a right. So that's another thing to consider in cutting. Is anybody sleeping yet? No? Okay. Now let's get into why you want to ergo cut. Okay, Eddie, we're going to have to switch to this one here and want to focus probably right about there. So, can you zoom out of here? Just a little bit. Okay. So what you're going to find when you cut with a rotary cutter is on a straight-handled cutter, this here, you want to have this at about a 45-degree angle. And the reason for that is if you're too low, you're not going to have, you'll notice here on the bottom, you're not going to have a lot of, you're not going to be able to have a lot of surface area for cutting. If you're too high, the problem is it's hard to push it forward. So you split the difference at about 45, and you get a nice amount of cutting area under here, and you've got enough kind of front force to push it forward. So when you learn to cut, if you're using a straight handle, they're going to tell you a 45, hold it there, and you go. A few things to look at on that. And this is all straight handle cutters, works pretty much like that. You'll see some that are slightly curved, but they're all going to be very similar. You've got to kind of hold it at that angle and go. But notice how my wrist is all turned sideways and stuff. This isn't a big deal if you're only cutting a couple things at a time. If I am cutting kits all day and I use a straight handle cutter, my forearm will hurt the next day. First time this happened, I'm like, why does my arm hurt? All I did was cut. But because of the angle of this, over time, you will stress your forearm. Ergonomic cutters are a different story. Because of the shape of it, notice how when I hold it, I'm straight up and down here. So I've got really good surface area for cutting. And I don't have to get my forearm all the way up in the air. I can keep it nice and low. But more importantly, look at how my hand has straightened out there. And the mistake a lot of people make when they get one of these, and this is why a lot of people don't like these, is they want to grab it like that and cut. And that's really not a whole lot different from this from an ergonomic standpoint, so you haven't gained anything. What you want to do with this is you've got this nice pad right here. That goes right under your knuckle right there. You just put that right there. It fits right in there, and you're good to go. And and what's nice about it, so now your hand's right on top pushing down, so you've got good downward force. Whereas this one here, to get the downward force, you kind of lever it a little bit. That's where another part of the stress on your forearm comes from. This one here, you're sitting right on top of it, so you've got good downward force, and you've got lots of control back and forth. So that and so all of your ergonomic cutters are what they're going to try and do is straighten your arm out and put you over the top of the blade more. And so that's yeah, you can go back. Nobody wants to see my belly as I sit down. So that's really the big difference you're going to notice. Every cutter is a little bit different. Like the Tula Pink cutter looks really pretty, and it's kind of halfway between these here. It's going to have like a little notch there, and it's more of a straight handle. A lot of people like those who are halfway to an ergo cutter. And honestly, like I said, if you're just now and again sewing, straight versus an ergo cut, not going to make a huge difference unless you've got some sort of arthritis or some sort of tendonitis in your wrist. But over time, like I said, if I'm cutting kits all day, I will use an ergonomic cutter because it's much. The next day my arm's not going to hurt as much. The other thing, because of how the angle stuff goes, so if I'm cutting sitting down, let me see if I'm going to go turn sideways here, Eddie. So if I'm trying to cut sitting down, I've got to lift my elbow up because if my elbow's too low, I can't really get the right angle. I've got to come all the way up. So you've got your arm sitting up in the air while you're cutting sitting down. If you cut sitting down with this guy, see the difference? How I've got to kind of get up there a little bit to cut with this. Whereas this, I can keep my arm almost parallel to the bench. So if you don't want to get up, if you're like me and you're a lazy person and you have your cutting board set up next to your sewing machine so you can cut half square triangles without having to get up, you're going to want one of these because you can actually cut sitting down with those without looking like a chicken, I guess. But that's the basics of rotary cutters. Like I said, the big decision is the big decision is kind of you start out with what size, and like I said, 45 millimeter is kind of a no-brainer. Unless you're going to be doing a lot of template work, then you would want to probably look at a 28 millimeter. Or if you're doing a lot of thick stuff, like I said, you could go to a 60 millimeter if cost of ownership, I guess is the way you would say it, isn't a big deal because 60 millimeter is a great cutter for quilting because it just cuts nice and straight if you have no intention of doing curves. And then ergo versus straight, I would encourage everybody. Like I said, I am a big fan of these true cuts. These are cost on them they're priced about right. They're ambidextrous. You can use them left or right-handed. And once you get used to them, they're super duper comfortable, and you can cut really well with them. But if you have been quilting and cutting for a while, that transition from a straight to a cut to an ergo cut is a little bit of a learning curve, which is why even at our front counter I've got one of each because some of my Saturday help, I'm not going to name names, Ronnie, and Lynn, they don't like the ergo cut, but I happen to love it. I find it very useful. But anyway, I don't know if I'm rambling at this point, and I haven't seen any good comments come up, so I'm thinking that everybody probably checked out because I'm not nearly as entertaining as Becky. And I don't know. There's probably lots of reasons for that. But I do appreciate you all tuning in. Like I said, if you have any... next week, we're going to kind of stick to this kind of back to basics theme as well because I've got a couple... That one there. Oh. We're going to stick to back to basics. We're going to get into a couple other things because there's a few other tools that I use all the time that I sometimes forget that people aren't aware of. But I thought we'd start with cutters. If you have any dance for us monkey... I thought she was telling me to dance for money, and I'm like, people pay me not to dance. But yes, a dancing monkey. Thank you, Danny, even from the house. So anyway, that's pretty much all we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Join us. Remember to sew on and be excellent to each other.